Some centuries ago, before the struggle of law and chaos made Doomed Alissar as doomed as it is today, a budding schism threatened to tear apart the city of merchants, the city of Murus, which saw itself confronted by a philosophical question stemming from religious motivations. As it accumulated wealth and power, some of its denizens saw it as their just rewards to dwell in decadence and to amass visible, audacious wealth, whereas others saw this as an affront to their pantheon of deities and counseled in an ever more radicalized fashion an austerity of living, a more, if you will, Puritan way of life. And as things heated up and as the voices grew louder, the inner circle of merchant houses came up with a solution. Professing agreement and enthusiastic backing for the idea of funneling wealth into something more religiously productive, they pinned a target on the land of the Picts, convinced their radicalized brethren that to really do good they should go forth and convert, and so effectively got rid of them while creating the theocracy of Castigaris as a part-dependent, part-trading partner, still paying lip service at the temples and, more importantly, a fairly outrageous amount of money on a yearly basis to keep their rabidly zealous brethren from returning home. The merchant houses of Murus went back to their status quo and went back to their debauched revels. All these centuries later, now as Doomed Alissar is well and truly doomed, the connection remains. And as Tarentus, the city of thieves, falls to the Castigian legions bringing their version of order to the thieving sinners, there arrives in the port of Tarentus another cohort, in the form of a fleet of ships sent by the city-state of Murus, set on happily carrying out everything that the religious zealots don't have a use for. And it is the magnificence of these trading ships now laying moored in Tarentus' harbor basin that Oksana and Gehenna stand, observing, looking as they are for a way out of the occupation. Will they find a merchant willing to take them on, or will they be able to secure a more clandestine passage on one of the ships out of the beleaguered city? Well, I guess that is for the dice to decide. Hello friends, Anderson here, welcome back to the Black Sword Hack Oksana Thief Gladiator Queen Part 3 of the actual play series. Now in a city very much occupied by religious lunatics, Oksana and Gehenna have decided that this really doesn't have much of a future anymore, and they're striving to become full-fledged members of licensed thievery is somewhat moot in a city where thievery will, for the foreseeable future, very likely no longer be licensed. And so they've decided to gamble it on the truth of Oksana's presumed parentage. They've decided to follow the what-if scenario that goes a little like, what if Oksana's mother was telling the truth and Oksana's father really is an important man among the Northern Raiders? And what if he's rich? So far it's not more complex than that. There is not much more complex they can plan. Right now what they have to do is reach the territory of the Northern Raiders somehow, and the best way of the how, as sort of extrapolated from our world building exercise, is that little connection between the Merchant League of Murus and their descendants in the religious dominion of Castigaris. It does, I find, stand somewhat to reason that the merchants will swoop in an effort to grab everything and profit from the war, because that is what they do and how they have secured their world-spanning power so far. And so we can safely assume that there are some ships there. What we cannot really safely assume is that they will take on passengers. I do feel we have some options here. The first one would be to rely on the fairly sizable charisma that Oksana brings to the table and simply endeavor to talk our way to a berth on one of the ships. And failing that, there is probably always the option to try and make it as a stowaway, which seems more exciting and more risky. So let's see what the dice say and where we land on this. Now, I think with the occupation going on, it isn't going to be as simple as walking up to the moored ships and having a chat with one of the captains. You'll probably, in this particular scenario, not gonna be able to reach those ships. I imagine that the Castigian legions will guard the harbor and that you will not be allowed in and out there unless you are a sailor on one of the vessels. So I think our next likely course of action for Oksana is to approach sailors in their natural habitat, which is a port-side tavern. We assume taverns and alcohol are still legal. I'm not sure our Castigian overlords are that restrictive, but maybe we should ask the oracle. So, are taverns still legal? 2. No. Well, in that case, I imagine that the sailors are not actually allowed out of the harbor, which is going to make negotiations difficult and might mean that Oksana and Genaha have to sneak in to the harbor first. So as another night descends on Tarentus, 4 months into the occupation, as the torches come out, reflecting back from the gleaming breastplates of the Castigian soldiers cordoning off the harbor entrances, Oksana and Genaha have taken once more to the rooftops, creeping along high up above on the sloped roofs of the portside warehouses. There are, of course, guards patrolling up here as well. I feel the Castigians are nothing if not competent, but given the convoluted nature of how this city is set up, it is very likely much easier to avoid and spot guard patrols up here than it is down in the harborfront passageways that are much narrower and offer significantly fewer escape and evasion routes. Let's perhaps determine our general sneakiness approach by requiring 2 dexterity successes as we progress from the very center of the U shape that forms the harbor out on one leg of this shape towards the piers where the Mandurian ships are currently resting. I don't think there's a particular advantage or disadvantage here, so a simple check will do. That is the first distance covered as Oksana and Genaha stay low to the ground, making use of shadows cast by rooftop cranes used to lift up the cargo to the storage spaces high up above, and ducking behind sheds and other utility buildings erected in the center, the flat center of those somewhat domed roofs, keeping an eye on the distant silhouettes of a 3-person patrol, all carrying large pikes as it makes its way towards the tip of the direction where Oksana and Genaha are also heading, as the two look for a suitable hiding spot to duck behind, as this patrol will no doubt come back unless they descend once they've reached the end. This we will probably have to leave up to the dice. So let's roll a second dexterity check. Well, that's not good. That is a 19. That means we couldn't even succeed by burning doom. That's a mechanic I haven't quite explained yet. I think it's where we can roll a doom die and subtract the result from a die roll, which automatically downgrades it. But since the best we can roll is a 6, we'll still fail when rolling a 6. Now the options here are we can be spotted and get into some combat immediately, but that's a little bit too much fighting for my taste. What we could do instead is succeed at cost, which at least keeps the option open to remain stealthy while making it a little more tense and interesting. So that's what we're gonna do. I think the cost is that we manage to hide, but now end up trapped. Reaching the end of the row of warehouses, the Castigian soldier patrol does indeed turn around and come back towards the direction that inevitably will lead them into the path of Oksana and Genaha, who both recognize this threat and opt for a hiding approach. They duck into a small rooftop shed with a rickety wooden door, opening it just wide enough to squeeze through and hoping that it doesn't make a sound, and immediately pushing it closed behind them as they hear the footsteps of the soldiers approach, and they talk among themselves, in this case in their own dialect of the lingua franca of this world, of Cyrenian, the language of the Merchant League. And as the murmur of the voices grows louder, Genaha and Oksana realize that the murmur stops in front of the shed, and thinking quickly, Oksana looks for a way to block the door, which does it have a barring mechanism on the inside? That is unlikely, I find, so we pick the lowest result. The lowest result is a yes, but that would tell me that yes, it can be barred from the inside, but it's quite flimsy, so a spirited attempt from the outside will no doubt smash it open. But it does buy some time as the soldiers rattle the door from the outside, and it for the moment doesn't budge. Why are they coming in here? Well, as Oksana and Genaha scan the room for potential other exit and other hiding places, they realize that there are some low stools around an upturned box with a pewter cup and a set of bone dice on it, and it seems that they've chosen their hiding spot to overlap with the guard patrol's favorite break time clandestine activity, which is the very much not legal gambling for their wages, which, in the proud tradition of military guards throughout history, they will of course happily do and ignore what the law says. So therein, however, also I think lies a chance that they might not want to make a huge amount of noise and draw attention to this place from any of the perhaps more straight-laced colleagues down below, so they might not smash the door right away. Are they gonna smash the door right away? No. They resort instead to some rather ungodly swears and curses outside as they ponder what next to do and why this door won't budge, thinking perhaps something from the inside has fallen against it or the hinges have somehow gotten stuck. Now, is there some other escape route here? Is there maybe behind a sack like an opening to crouch through or something of the sort? We assume there are shelves in there and sacks and ropes and everything piled up for the maintenance of the cranes on the roof and for the general maintenance of the building. So is there perhaps a way to escape the building? This is not very likely, is it? So let's see. Yes, but only Oksana fits through because Genaha is a bit too robustly built. So let's see whether Oksana can squeeze through this little gap in the back wall of this shed that is concealed by some sacks leaning against it that she finds, and also whether she can navigate the fact that there's an immediate slippery slope to drop down once she's out. That sounds like a dexterity check again. That is successful, so she pulls herself through, barely managing to clear the little distance between the floor and the broken off part of the rear wall. And as her hips clear the wall into the open, she immediately turns and uses her hands to safeguard herself against a drop down, rolling into nothingness. Okay, but now what? What are the soldiers doing? Are they still milling around? Are they splitting up? What is happening here? Let's do another Oracle yes/no roll. Are they still hanging out outside and now comparing home improvement notes, and everyone is trying to one-up the other in expertise on how to open a stuck door without making too much noise? Hell yes, they're still standing there and doing their own improvised tool time session. So we now need some way for Oksana to divert their attention elsewhere. That could be, well, I imagine that could be comparatively tricky considering she's sort of not on the side that she wants to draw them to. So I guess now she has to navigate past them first, which is not that easy. I think that would involve like shuffling on the sloped bit of the roof on her belly past them until she can reach like a secluded spot and ascend again. So let's do that, maybe. Yeah, let's do another dexterity check. Ooh, absolutely stellar result. Let's see how that is going to benefit us. I can't really think of a good outcome immediately relating to the shuffling dexterity check. Maybe the positive aspect is that we stay out of sight around the half bend and come up behind another wooden shed, and seeing that shed there, Oksana on a whim quickly looks inside, seeing like some casks piled up there and some clay jugs, and identifying some scratch marks on the outside of the jugs as being flammable material, thinking, oh, that's probably going to get their attention. She goes ahead and uncorks one of those jugs and spills an oily liquid in a trail on the ground leading from the opening of the shed to the pile of flammable liquids stacked up against the rear wall. And she shuffles back down again, lying flat on the roof, like taking that with her, trailing it a little bit further down, continuing this fuse-like trail until she's tucked away in a position out of sight from anyone running up top. And rummaging in her backpack, I think we have to see if she has something with her that helps her light this fire. Considering she has like this adventuring kit with her, I think it's not too unlikely, so let's just roll a yes or no question. Has she brought something that will help her here, or are we in a fairly embarrassing predicament? Hell yes, she's brought the goods. She's brought her little tinder box that she uses to light up torches, and making use of it, she creates a spark that sets the oily fuse alight as it shoots towards the shed and sets it ablaze almost instantly. I think that's probably good enough for an end scene. We don't need to roll for climbing back, and we don't need to determine whether the guards are coming running. Of course they're coming running, so this distraction works. Oksana reunites with Genaha. They both walk towards the opposite end of this U-shape and descend down into the harbor and stick to the shadows between the warehouses, scanning the scene and trying to find some sailors on one of the ships that are still up and about. Are there any? That seems pretty likely. Beautiful. Okay, no. And also no with matching dice. That is something that I had personally forgotten. Thanks for reminding me in the comments. There is another table here regarding what happens if an oracle roll goes this way, and it is very negative. What this means is that the rams up to each ship moored there in the harbor, each merchant ship, is guarded by a pair of Castigian soldiers, because there's been too many incidents of sailors being unruly and they've now been put on lockdown. No sailors are allowed out of their cots, out of their ships after dark, and they're being guarded, and there's no chance for us to encounter them outside of going onto one of the ships. Fair enough, think to themselves Oksana and Genaha, eyeing the last ship in the row that is tucked away at a pier at the very end of the harbor U. That sort of seems the safest bet. I think we should roll another stealth check to make our way there, which isn't too unlikely. That is successful, so I think we're now on a target that is sort of in a nice position where the ramp up to the ship with the two soldiers guarding it can't be easily seen by the next pair of soldiers guarding the next ship in the line, so it's fairly isolated to those two pairs of eyes now keeping watch, and maybe that's an advantage for either getting past them or getting on the ship. What's the approach here? I think the approach is maybe to get their attention somehow and try to dispatch them. For this I'll make a strength check for Genaha. Why strength? Because she is now dipping off the pier and hanging from its side, and doing so quite successfully, as Oksana, casting one backward glance over her shoulder to make sure that the other pair of soldiers doesn't immediately spot her, emerges from the shadows in which she'd been crouching, holding her water skin in hand, and on very unsteady legs stumbles towards the pair of soldiers guarding the last ship in the row, trying to convincingly appear falling down drunk. We do this by way of a charisma check, which of course succeeds in this case, so the soldiers, by the stumbling person's antics and aren't particularly amused by it, they in unison step forward and come towards Oksana, who, right before they reach her, makes a gesture like blowing a handful of sand towards one of them. We make a casting check. Very successfully, one of them immediately drops unconscious, and the other one doesn't get much of a moment of confusion as behind him a seasoned pit fighter pops up and tries to plunge a dagger into his throat. That, I would say, is an attack roll with advantage, with a critical success, which in this case simply means that the body drops to the floor soundlessly, emitting just a gargle as the air escapes the puncture. Before Oksana can even react, Gena doesn't lose much time, crouches on one knee next to the other one, rams the dagger into that throat, rips the throat out, and lowers both of them into the water, where they glide in without much of a sound. And of course their armor ensures that they both immediately sink to the bottom, so we should have wiped them out without a trace. Now here's a question. This is a sword and sorcery world, which means there's all kinds of jumbled historical periods muddled together. We probably have like northern raiders in their longship. We have the galleys with the more Greek motive, or perhaps even like a little bit of a Ottoman galley, like later period rowing warship. What are these merchant ships like? I feel like they have fairly wide bodies, flat surface, and like a higher sort of turret at the very end, which the captain looks down from upon, propelled forward by these triangular large sails on one single strong beam. And there is, in my view, a likelihood that the captain's cabin is of this turret thing. I'm not particularly firm on my nautical term, sorry about that. So would it be possible to sneak into the captain's cabin now that we have an open pathway on deck and everybody is forced to stay in their own spaces? Is the captain in there? That is very, very probable, I think. So let's give it a shot. That's a clear yes. Okay, so after many complications, we now have access to the captain. The question is, how are we going to make use of it? Because the captain is very likely not too thrilled to see the two of them, and the captain is probably even less thrilled if they should find out that the two guards have been unceremoniously disposed of. But maybe that can work to our advantage as well, in a way. Maybe. Depends on what the captain is up to, really. Is it 100% legal, or is this an opportunity to slip away under the cover of darkness? We'll see. Let's build a captain, maybe. Now, according to the solo rules in the Black Sword hack, there is not really much of a need to make a song and dance or creating NPCs. Black Sword hack sort of argues that if you're in a village and you want a farmer NPC, then it's very likely that there's a farmer NPC, so go ahead and envision one. That's all well and good. I would like a little bit more scene setting here, so I will first determine, is this captain native to the Merchant League? 3, no, but they have worked there for so long that they barely have memories of their homeland. Their homeland of, we roll a die 6 and a die 8. 5 and a 1, the Pict territories. The captain is a Pict by birth who was naturally probably captured by the Castigians as a child, and then in some kind of an exchange of go forth and be civilized, we deign to give you an education, ended up in a kind of a naval career and then signing on with the merchants of the Mandurian merchant fleets. That sounds plausible. Is this a man or woman? 1 to 3 is a woman, 4 to 6 is a man. It's a man. Let's grab the book of names. By the way, since a few of you asked, this is called the Story Games Name Project, book of names, and I got it as a print on demand on Lulu. So in case you want to, this is where you can get it. So maybe just make our own name based on the old English syllable pattern here. First syllable is Ten-Kain. Second is 1. Rick, Keinrick. That is the captain of Pictish origin. Depending on whether we get a positive or a negative reaction of the captain, that could also be kind of illuminating. If it's like a positively inclined person, maybe this is somebody who bears no great love for the theocracy and is actually in favor of helping some people escape for what they did to him. And otherwise it is someone who is very deep in denial on their own culture of birth and will become very, very standoffish and aggressive. So attitude determination for NPCs is reliant on a charisma check. So as Oksana stands in front of the captain's quarters door, she thinks what is the best approach to handle this and simply knocks. And the door opens to a frowning face of the captain, who probably expects this to be the Castigian soldiers and is already somewhat prepared for whatever do they want from me now, while the sight of the two women standing there in the darkness is immediately of interest, alarm, surprise. Let's see, charisma check. What is going on? Okay, so that is another one, which means critical success. So the captain immediately picks up on the situation, shoots a glance out, gray shot, black curls flying around his head, beard stubble, some faded Pictish tattoos around the eyes, and immediately ushers them in and closes the door behind. Now, that's going to be a positive interaction. Let's actually give us some oracle prompts to see what is going on with this ship. What does the captain personally want? What's the captain's pressing issue right now that might make it possible for us to find some common ground here, now that we have an immediately fantastic basis to start off with that critical success. So we have D66, the red one goes first. 41 revenge, that seems incredibly fitting. 52 cult. Okay. I mean, I'll take it. It's no issue at all then, as the captain hates the Castigians with a passion and maybe misunderstands the situation. Okay, I think this is maybe what we can do here. Where are you two coming from just now? I thought I had all of you lot in the hold. Well, no matter. I'll bring you down with the others. The captain is not only smuggling our two out of the city, there's a whole bunch of people out of sight stowed away, and there are some clandestine accommodations there just for this purpose, so we have a really, really good chance to make it out of here. Are we gonna dispel the notion? Depends. Is this a very cohesive group? Do we imagine that this is gonna be revealed by the people down there not knowing us? I don't think so. I think this is more like individuals going through brokers, paying them off, and then securing a passage on this vessel. So the captain brings Oksana and Genaha below decks and into like a secluded space under the lowest deck that has been created in one of the bases left for ballast and such. Now, the only thing we need to still determine is whether the disappearance of those two soldiers is a problem, but considering there's also fire being set, maybe there's enough confusion here where they attribute the one to the other, and maybe they talk to the captain. Is it going to be more than a perfunctory search? That's something we have to determine. I don't think there is a likelihood one way or the other. I'll just leave this up to a one roll to see whether this escalates into something where maybe the ship is searched and the stowaways are all found. I feel like there's maybe like another 3 people with us in that hold. Let's see. Is the disappearance of the 2 guards going to be a problem? 5. Yes. Okay. Well, in that case, as the guard change happens the dawn of the following morning, and Oksana and Genaha are getting increasingly uncomfortable in their confined spaces, an alarm sounds. The disappearance of the 2 guards has been noted, and now the morning shift, fresh and eager to prove themselves to their theocratic overlords, sets to work, and one cohort of 4 marches onto the ship, and the shudder is felt throughout the entire wooden structure, and Genaha and Oksana tense and immediately reach for their hidden weapons. And it isn't long before there are protesting voices, and the shuddering of the steps comes closer and closer. And does one of the 4 guards notice anything about the specifics of this ship? Does the guard notice perhaps a crack where there shouldn't be one? An obviously recently moved basket or box that hides something? Are we being found? Yes. Uh-oh. Well, I guess we'll have to see how that goes next time. So thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you then, and bye for now.